honest, the topic of this talk is a bit unusual for me. I am an economist. I have spent last 6 years as governor of a central bank, and you would expect me to elaborate on issues like global finance, non-conventional monetary policy and its pros and cons and the likes. But when I was invited to join the conference organized by Institute of Cultural Diplomacy, I thought that I should share with you my thoughts on issues that are broader than just finance. But before I do it, let me refer to something what Lawrence Gonzi said very properly, that we should not blame the people, the electorates. They had some reasons to elect Trump or to reject the UK membership in the EU. However, this does not mean that this immunity from critics should be spread over those people who ride the wave of dissatisfaction, like Donald Trump, or like Nigel Farage, who is the father of Brexit, maybe together with David Cameron and Rupert Murdoch. We should not restrain from criticism because they have either hidden agenda. Mr. Farage was never about leaving the euro by the UK. He is about destroying the European Union, and he is very sincere about it, very sincere about it. And Mr. Trump, I will never stop criticizing him, at least for the moment, for his complete ignorance, incompetence. When he says we have to fight China, but at the same time he says I will revoke the recently signed trade pact between the US and the Trans-Pacific trade agreement, which is exactly what the Chinese want. This is exactly because what the Chinese want, because it creates a vacuum in the Pacific, which the Chinese will obviously fill with their own agenda, with their own trade pact. So either you want to fight China or you want to help China. You have to make up your mind or read more or hear or listen to your advisors. He won the presidency on the anti-globalist ticket. Fine. But then, why does he want to deregulate banking? Because this is the most perverse, the most painful manifestation of globalization that destroys democracy, I think. Why? Because if you allow financial institutions to grow, to interconnect, they become immune, they become infallible. You cannot touch them. They rule the world, in the sense not that this guy or another guy makes political choice who should be the Prime Minister of Italy. This is not a theory. Mr. Berlusconi, no matter whether we like him or not, some people like him, many in Italy, he had to go because the financial market demanded him to go. Otherwise, Italy would be broke. And this is not about people, it's about the system. And suddenly, Mr. Trump, because he has the opinion of the last person he has talked to, makes an announcement that he will deregulate banking. This is exactly contrary to what he was running on during the election. So, okay, the people have reason to be angry and to want to disenfranchise the establishment, but it does not mean that the one that is using it has the right to be stupid. Okay, now let's talk about not stupidity, but maybe naivete. European Union, Europe of common interests or common values. Of course, this is some sort of provocation. We don't need, we shouldn't separate these two issues. Europeans have some common interests and share, they don't even know, they share some common values. The problem is that we never discussed this issue. It was either so obvious, it was obvious in the 50s, in the generation of politicians, in the generation of founding fathers of the EU. For them, European Union, whatever the name was at that time, was not just an economic project. It was a great political, geopolitical, historical project. Well, it seemed to be, it was for us in Poland in 2000, 2005, 2003, when we had referendum as you had in Malta. By the way, we joined the EU at the same day. And, well, for us, it was also a historical, a political project. Economic project, yes, also, but historical project. Well, then, why haven't we, since the very beginning of the European Union, and it's not to Poland, but to the French, to the Germans, to the Italians, to the founding fathers of the European Union, why didn't we discuss two issues? Common values. Well, the answer is obvious, because it seemed to be obvious. We were for human rights, social justice, and so on and so on and so on. That's not enough. First, you have to discuss it all the time to verify them. Maybe they are changing, and now the people in Europe, in many European countries, not just in the exotic East, Poland and Hungary, are rejecting liberal democracy because they don't know what the difference is between liberal democracy and democracy. Democracy meaning the rule of majority, expressed in the majority of the parliament. Liberal democracy is the same kind of democracy, but controlled by law, constitutional law included, and the media, no matter how distorted they are these days. The problem is when they lack, we suffer even more. This has never been discussed, or this has been discussed only cursorily, only in elites, among elites. I'm emotional because my country is now undergoing a change that I deplore very much. I mean, as we speak, there are things going on in the Polish parliament. I think it's an expression that we are, as a nation, against changing our system. We would like to stick with liberal democracy, which is now being taken off. Now, the second issue is common interests. This is more tricky. Of course, we have common interests, but not only we don't discuss them, but also we are afraid of discuss common interests, and also we have no opportunity to discuss common European interests? Well, when I say this, I am being approached by, for example, my German friends. Well, look at the European Parliament. It's a real parliament. It's a living body. Come on. But these guys are elected to the European Parliament on local, which is national issues. At least in my country, and I'm sure in all countries, they are elected on local issues, only with a very low turnout at the polls. So, what is their mandate, and what is their interest? The election campaign to the European Parliament does not present an opportunity to discuss European interests. What would it be? Well, I know that this is now, at this moment of necessary consolidation of European Union, unrealistic. But one day, we have to venture a pan-European election to the post of European President. Again, the serious people in Germany would ask, what kind of powers this damned president would have? And I say, it does not really matter too much. It does not really matter too much. This person would be a symbol of European Union. And the most important thing is that he would be elected by the people. I know how difficult it is, but why I'm raising this? Because in the election campaign, there would be some candidates, some programs, and necessary discussion about what binds us in Europe. Why is it so difficult and so politically incorrect? Well, because if you start discussing European values, then this is basically easy. I mean, easy from the point of view of political correctness. But if we start discussing interests, then we have to define what is not our interest, or what are our adversaries. And this is politically incorrect. I once asked the question like this to Lady Prime Minister of Denmark in a place, Davos. My God, terrible. And she looked at me with disdain, because as if I wanted to spoil the nice atmosphere of this gathering. She, come on, our interest is to help the world to prosper. Oh my God. How can you win any election outside of Denmark, maybe? Not anymore. When you tell the people in Denmark or in Greece or even in Malta, what we are going to achieve in the European Union is to, fight for climate change. What? Come on, this is so naive. We have, sooner or later, seriously discuss why is it that European countries decided to create a union on top of what was the rationale in the 50s. What is the rationale now? Why is it so important that small and medium-sized countries of Europe together create a trade superpower? We thought that some time ago we would be the regulatory superpower. Google, the only person Google is afraid of is the EU commissioner. What's her name? The Dane. Yeah. So this is these are interests. There are other interests, of course there are other interests, but we have to spell them out to make people feel that there is something that binds us together, not only free movement, because this already exists, and the people don't appreciate anything that already exists, because they think it has always existed. No way. The best thing for Europe would be to abolish it for 1 year. For 1 year. And everybody would immediately become Euro enthusiastic after next year. But unfortunately, this is not doable. So the topic I chose was to raise reflection, because I think that the lack of discussion on our common European values and common European interests makes European Union unattractive, especially for younger people. And that is why this is so easy for the politicians to do what they do in the last 30 years, which means putting the blame on Brussels for all the painful decisions that they have to make, and of course scream the public opinion for all the good things that happen, because they are so smart and so good for the people. Of course, this talk is not a lecture. It's more an exclamation of my present emotions that are very strong, very negative about some people in Europe, and in America. I even floated a notion that I have already heard back, which is the notion of the International of Pyromaniacs. You know, if you look at some people, what they really want is to set fire. They have no clue what to do with it later. And that is why, we have to fight back. I mean, those people who, in Europe, that know that Europe is bound by common interests and common values, should make it clear, should fight back. Don't leave the field to the pyromaniacs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thought-provoking, from my point of view, somewhat controversial lecture. I would start by being a little spoilsport. Is it correct, as you do, or as I understand you, equating globalization in trade with the trans-Pacific trade agreements that Trump is against, or the TISA or the CETAs, which after all came into being after the GATS agreements broke down, General Agreement in Trade and Services, conducted by the WTO. Why? Because the poorer part of the world were against it, because the labor unions and NGOs throughout the world were against it, because they were seen as undemocratic. They were conducted in secret. We only knew about it because of WikiLeaks provided us with information about this. So I contest that it is fair to compare or equate these agreements with globalization in trade. It's a question on what premises these are conducted. Could we hear your views on that?
Donald Trump does not promise to revoke or to leave the GATT or the agreement on services. his promise is more, let's say, immediate. Something was signed, so let's withdraw from it. And at the same time, being a self-proclaimed China basher, it doesn't make sense. I'm not discussing whether he's right or wrong. I wanted to make it clear that he's inconsistent. And inconsistent, when you say an inconsistent about a top politician, it means that he does not know. This is what I wanted to say.
I'm British. If the rest of the European Union would like Britain to remain, would you advocate they should say that once Article 50 has been served, we should have...
Which is what?
If the United Kingdom, if the Europeans would like United...
Okay.
Should the European Union say to the UK, we will give you a hard Brexit for 2 years? Do you think that would serve sentiment?
Well, there will be hard Brexit no matter what I say, because there is no other way around. It's just you know, I mean, what kind of other solution can you imagine? From purely, let's say, economic point of view, the deal is between allowing Britain to benefit from the common market, especially what is important for the Brits, common market in whatever common market there is in services. And for that, you have to agree to free movement of people. As a matter of fact, it looks as, in this respect, well, there are principles, and there are also national interests of countries like Poland or Romania, who apparently would like to have the access to British labor market unlimited. That's not true. That's not true. If I were Prime Minister of Poland, I would be cynical to the backbone. First, we don't need any more Polish young talent emigrating to Britain. What we want is Britain to pay as much as possible, for example, as Norway, which is 90% of the European quota, to remain in the common market. You want to call it, you are in the European Economic Area, you have to pay it in money.
One more question.
Thank you. That was interesting. I wanted to ask the question to the last speaker, but I'll ask you nonetheless.
Yes.
The question is...
If you use the microphone, I cannot hear.
Okay.
But other people have to...
Okay, maybe I'll put it below, yes. Would you agree with the notion that people feel that the left has left the poor? That's why they're looking right. And if you do agree with that notion, what can concretely be done to assure the citizens of the European Union, because it's not enough to say we have to teach them tolerance towards immigrants. There has to be something in it for them. Thank you.
Well, why do you ask me a question about the future of the left? I don't feel competent in this. However, okay, I have agreed to speak, so I'll squeeze out something of it. First, the crisis of the left is the product of financial globalization. Let me explain you why. Financial globalization, one side effect of it, well, we benefit from it immensely. I'm not against globalization. We benefit from trade globalization, from financial globalization. We just overlooked to deal with negative consequences, negative side effects. And so the financial globalization makes, well, weakens the sovereignty of national states. Just remember the example of Tsipras and Syriza. Okay, what did he promise in the election? And then it took him like 2 or 3 weeks to completely change his mind. I don't blame him, because he realized that he has no way out. And it was not Angela Merkel or Paul Thompson, the representative of the IMF, who bashed the poor Greeks. It was the objective situation. They had to do what had to be done, and it was completely against what he promised during the election. This is a disaster for the left, but the same disaster can happen everywhere. No matter what you are, left or right, you have to do what it takes, which means that people get betrayed, feel betrayed. They say, well, let's look for something else. If the left does basically the same as the right, then let's look for Trump, let's look for Beppe Grillo, and the likes, and the likes. Of course, they will not help, but they will at least, well, the problem with those people is that when they get to power, they tend to stay for some time, and the damage is prolonged. So this is the main problem with the left. On top of everything, the populist right, or those, well, they have hijacked left-wing, let's say the social electorate problems. So now the left has a problem how to reinvent itself. Because suddenly, in most countries, traditional left-wing parties become parties of, well, relatively well-to-do, white-collar intellectuals. Well, at least in my country.
Well, thank you very much. I don't think we...
You can release me.